I read these two books a while ago, so I had to just kind of refresh myself a bit this morning on the content and the details. I'll try and be quick because I've got limited file space as usual on the phone. So we'll start with this one, Big Lonely Doug. Big Lonely Doug is a tree in sort of the southwest part of Vancouver Island, which was you couldn't really say discovered, but became heavily publicised a few years ago when the existing forest around it was clear cut, leaving this giant Douglas fir. I think it's the second largest one in Canada. Largest as in volume, not the tallest. So the tree itself became a bit of a mascot for environmentalists campaigning to stop the clear cutting and preserve the old growth forests, habitats, ecosystems, etc. And so anyway, that was then, and it was on the news, and it was this, and it was that. If you ever are in the area, it's an impressive tree, I have to say. We're in that region a few years ago over the winter. I mean, I've been lots of times. It's in the Port Renfrew area. Stood on the top of the hill. It's kind of set in the cut block down in a bit of a valley, and the logging road is up a little bit higher elevated, and you look down and you think, yeah, it's a big tree, but do I want to walk down there over all them stumps to see it up close? And it was raining and I couldn't be bothered going down to see it. But then I went with two friends of mine this summer and actually walked down to the tree. And I tell you what, it's impressive. It's an immense natural structure, and I don't know what it is. It's I think a lot has to do with the setting. I mean, it is a huge tree, but the setting as well. You rarely see a tree that size stood on its own with nothing around it. It could argue that it's more impressive even than the Red Creek fir, which is apparently the world's largest Douglas fir, which is probably 10 miles away, or maybe less than 10 miles as the crow flies. But that's kind of surrounded by other forest. So Big Lonely Doug is worth taking a look at if you're ever there. But anyway, about the book, it is an easy one to read. Must be a local, I think it is a local author on one of the Gulf Islands here who wrote it. It's sort of, I mean, the tree itself is a symbol, and it sort of gets your attention, obviously. But the book itself is kind of a historical look at the region and the logging industry versus the environmental issues and environmentalist people and sympathisers and the kind of battles between the two sides. It paints a very negative picture of the logging industry in general, not about the actual workers, the people out there doing the hands-on work in the forests and in the mills, but it's about the management and the corporations behind it and the money and everything else. It's very, very unscrupulous. It's not easy to read actually for that reason at times, because you just kind of could get quite despondent, but the truth is the truth, and it's better to learn it than to pretend it doesn't happen. No, it never did happen. The book also kind of focuses on a few key figures throughout. It's a good, easy read. It's kind of relative relevant if you're interested in, you know, forestry and ecology and everything else. The two sort of sides to it, industry versus environment. Yeah, I'd recommend it. A few wishy-washy bits in it where they tried to inject some emotion and focus a little bit too much on some individuals who I don't think did actually that much of any great significance. But other than that, it's pretty good. I give it a 7 out of 10. Second book, The Man Who Planted Trees, Story of Lost Groves, The Science of Trees and a Plan to Save the Planet by Jim Robbins. Should first mention Jim Robbins has done a fantastic job. His work as an author is just exemplary. It really is. His research is so thorough. His delivery is quite captivating. You know, it really does keep your attention throughout. And it's a good story too. But he's just put it together very, very well. So the story itself is based around a guy called David Millarch, and he went on a quest to clone the world's sort of champion trees, with his thinking being that there was something in their DNA that would procure their longevity. You know, these trees are obviously great survivors of pests, diseases and changes in the climate over hundreds of years. So he wanted to, you know, go around and clone these trees and replant them wherever, you know. So the story itself is you know, it's a very noble cause, and there's merit in it as well. Obviously, at a time when, you know, it's not a myth or a made-up story that thousands, if not millions, of hectares of forest have been lost, you know, in recent years due to kind of extended summers and milder winters. You know, pests and diseases are thriving, and it's not just the odd tree that's been singled out. There's so much stuff has died, and you know, beetles are able to prey not just on the weakened trees as was traditionally the case, but they're now able to invade younger trees, healthy trees, and kill them decisively. So that was kind of Millarch's vision, him and his sons and his family. So it's their journey about their, obviously, the physical cloning of trees and their efforts to gain kind of recognition and funding. And it's a good, compelling read in that respect. But as well as that, you know, as I mentioned about the author Jim Robbins, he takes you off on different tangents all over the place with related issues. Like I say, it's a very thorough book. You know, I mean, not just talking about the obvious, you know, benefits of trees and forests that people talk about. You know, the common ground of sequestering carbon and you know, cleaner air, you know, increased levels of water vapor in the air. But some more complex and less mainstream subjects as well, like he talks about the Biosphere 2 project. He talks about chemical aerosols created by forests, you know, like a microenvironment, and the effects that has on the environment and its inhabitants. He talks about watershed kind of filtration created by tree roots. Willows in particular is very interesting how they've actually been used very successfully in cleaning up toxic waste, and other pollutants in the ground. On the flip side of that, it also talks about, dead zones in the sea, in the ocean, where there is no filtration system, and chemicals and toxic waste have leaked through the land into the ocean. It kind of inspires you to, look in a different, go and research this and that, and then come back to the book. You could spend a lot of time just kind of getting sidetracked, which is good. I won't tell you how the story ends, but it's a very, very good read, very informative, and very thought-provoking. So yeah, The Man Who Planted Trees. I would give this a 10, to be honest. 10 out of 10. You're always going to get people who are going to deny that this is true and that's true, and come out with alternative theories and kind of deny the merit in anything. But this is one of the best books, related to trees and the science of trees, because it does touch on, brings in various other scientists who very much specialise in their own fields. I'd highly recommend this one. Gotta just stop this file a sec. So I been trying to read more lately. I think everyone should read more books. There was a time not that long ago, it seemed, when you would see people in coffee shops reading, or on the park benches, or in restaurants, or whatever, reading a book. Now what you get is people just swiping at phones, not even so much communicating with someone else, although you see them do that too. But often is the case, they're just hopefully swiping, thinking something might come along that catches their attention. It really is, it's a bad habit. And, while books tend to increase or enhance your level of concentration and your patience as well, phone culture seems to have the opposite effect. You can see by the very motion of people, you can go watch a few seconds, they don't even have the patience to wait a few seconds, they don't finish what they're reading, they just move on. Their attention span is gradually being reduced and diluted. It's such a bad habit and a bad culture. There are benefits to communicating, with the facilities that phones have, but you've got to know when to shut them down. You've got to kind of, distinguish the difference between what's helpful and what is just a waste of your own time. And they affect people's personality too, I bet everyone knows somebody, hopefully you're not this person who, you'll be talking to them and having a conversation, and they don't have the patience to listen to only you. Their eyes gradually, they'll sort of be listening, yeah, agreeing, they'll just kind of pull the phone out. They'll start with just a glance down, and then they'll carry on listening, and then they'll just sort of be half listening, and then before you know it, they're not even listening to you, they're just absorbed again with the phone. And that could make you quite angry, I suppose, but personally, to me, when people do that, they just shrink, in my eyes, as a person, as a character, they just shrink, into nothing in the end, where don't take them seriously at all. I don't really have any respect for them, you know, for whatever, that's the effect it has on me, you know. I just think less and less of them. So yeah, read more books. Don't be one of these people walking down the street, you know, absorbed with your phone. They're everywhere. Try not let that be you, because, you know, and as a man in particular, you know, I can't speak for women because I'm not one. I don't pretend to know or relate to them very well. But you know, as a man, you're supposed to project strength and character. At least that's what I always believed. And this shit, walking down the street, just absorbed by your phone, you know, head down, missing the whole world around you, it looks weak. You know, it really does look weak. It's kind of, you look like a cunt. That's how you look. I did a video about phones at work. It was kind of a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it was a bit coarse. So I had to remove it because, you know, a lot of my customers found that I had like do the YouTube thing and they watch. So I some of them I've had to kind of, well, not remove, but they're unlisted nowadays. So anyway, 2 very good books. I'm going off on a tangent now about phones again. Big Lonely Doug, The Man Who Planted Trees. Thanks for watching and listening.